Roar. Outside the void, layers of demonic aura were torn apart as an immense purple-golden dragon coiled through the air. Its scales shimmered with golden light, and the brilliance spread, dissolving the surrounding demonic energy. A terrifying dragon's might surged, filling the heavens and earth. Behind the purple-golden dragon, enormous creatures followed closely, their vast bodies blocking out the sun. In an instant, spiritual energy surged, causing the overwhelming demonic power that had once filled the world to retreat. That's the true Dragon Emperor, the supreme elder of the Dragon Clan. And here comes the Phoenix King and the Queen of the Phoenix Clan. Those are Kuanping Ancestor and the King of the Celestial Great Apes. On the northern wilderness hill, many heavenly supremes let out joyous exclamations, for the massive creatures that had appeared were all renowned super divine beasts from the Great Thousand World. The powerful beings mentioned earlier were peak experts comparable to the later stages of the Saint grade, not weaker than figures like Chen Tian, the azure-robed sword saint, or the Undying Lord. After all, in this Great Thousand World, there are countless beings, and aside from humans, the Divine Beast clan is also incredibly prosperous. Among them, the super divine beast races are even more favored by nature, and their overall strength rivals that of humans. Although humans and the Divine Beast clan have their disputes, they all belong to the Great Thousand World, and when faced with the extraterritorial evil clans, they are able to unite. Everyone understood that if the Great Thousand World were to fall into the hands of the extraterritorial evil clans, all living beings would likely be enslaved, with lives worse than death. Amidst the many astonished gazes, the purple-golden dragon and the enormous creatures behind it began to shrink, eventually transforming into beams of light, floating in midair. Leading them was a middle-aged man clad in a purple-golden robe, his rugged face and eyes like golden orbs, exuding a terrifying pressure as he scanned his surroundings. By his side stood the Phoenix King and Queen, one male and one female. The Phoenix Queen, Huang Jin, had been seen by Mu Chen before. Though her strength was only at the mid-saint grade, the combined power of the Phoenix clan would surge dramatically when these two were united. If they worked together, even two of the top heavenly demon emperors would not stand a chance against them. Behind them were other peak experts from super divine beast races, each one as fearsome as could be. Brother Chen, we're not late, are we? The true Dragon Emperor's golden eyes turned to Chen Tian, his voice as thunderous as a storm. Chen Tian, the azure-robed sword saint, and the Undying Lord all felt a sigh of relief as they gazed at the timely reinforcements. Though many heavenly supremes were present on northern Wilderness Hill, they had to maintain the grand formation and could not easily move. Alone, the three of them would have struggled to block so many of the extraterritorial evil clan's powerful warriors. Now that the true Dragon Emperor, the Phoenix King and Queen, and others had arrived, they could certainly share much of the pressure. Haha, these creatures are truly unrepentant, still thinking about our Great Thousand World. The true Dragon Emperor's golden eyes gleamed coldly as he gazed at the distant demonic shadows, letting out a chilling laugh. In the distance, the sacred heavenly demon emperor gave them a cold glance and said, "A group of reptiles dares to speak arrogantly? Once my extraterritorial evil clan takes the Great Thousand World, you wretched creatures will make excellent mounts. You damn bastard, you're looking for death." The celestial great ape king was furious, and upon hearing those words, his eyes went bloodshot. He clenched his hand, and a massive cudgel appeared, shattering the space around him as his vicious expression locked onto the sacred heavenly demon emperor. "Dark demon, deal with them. Don't let these reptiles get close," the sacred heavenly demon emperor said indifferently. "Heh, these reptiles are annoying, but their flesh is sweet. If I devour them, it will be quite a treat." The leader of the heavenly demon clan laughed, his eyes gleaming as he surveyed the true Dragon Emperor and the others. He then waved his hand. From the spatial rifts, monstrous demonic energy surged like waves, and several massive demonic shadows appeared behind him, releasing terrifying demonic might. These were clearly the strength of the heavenly demon emperor. Though lower planes have limits to what they can bear, this time, the extraterritorial evil clans had brought their greatest power to bear. Heh, in these years, we've caught a few of these reptiles, their flesh delicious. But it seems, compared to you, they're a bit lacking. The dark heavenly demon emperor smiled, his eyes focused on the true Dragon Emperor. The true Dragon Emperor's eyes darkened, his face hardening with icy intent. He said coldly, "Soon, I'll tear you to pieces, offering your remains to my clan in a ceremony. Let's see if you have the strength to do so." The dark heavenly demon emperor smiled and then suddenly grew cold. He gave the indifferent command, "Kill them." Boom. Behind him, The demonic shadows instantly erupted with a terrifying demonic aura, wreaking havoc across the heavens and earth. They directly engulfed True Dragon Emperor and the others, each of these attackers having reached the level of the Heavenly Demon Emperor. Kill. Slash these filthy scum. The towering Great Ape King was the first to roar, his massive staff shattering the void. It transformed into an enormous staff shadow, tearing apart the space as it swung fiercely towards one of the Heavenly Demon Emperors. Coimping Ancestor, Phoenix King, and other supreme divine beasts also struck without holding back. Spiritual energy surged, and the oppressive force spread across the battlefield, meeting the overwhelming demonic shadows head-on. Boom. Boom. The clash between the two sides caused the heavens to collapse and the earth to crack. The vast spiritual energy collided with the demonic aura, shaking the very fabric of reality, disrupting the sun, moon, and stars. True Dragon Emperor did not make a move, his golden eyes locked onto the dark, Heavenly Demon Emperor, who remained relaxed. From the latter's presence, True Dragon Emperor sensed a dangerously menacing aura. Reptile, are you not going to act? The dark, Heavenly Demon Emperor smiled at him. True Dragon Emperor's expression darkened. In the Great Thousand World, his status was supreme, and no one had dared address him like that. Despite the overwhelming danger before him, his golden eyes gleamed with a cold light. If you do not act, then you shall die. The dark, Heavenly Demon Emperor chuckled, and his black vortex-like eyes suddenly focused. A swirl of darkness condensed, transforming into a black line that shot out with terrifying speed. The black line exuded an aura of utter annihilation. Wherever it passed, it seemed to drain the vitality of everything in its path, an aura so chilling that it threatened to devour all life. Though the black line seemed insignificant, when it appeared, True Dragon Emperor's expression became extremely grave. He dared not slacken his guard. A dragon's roar echoed in his throat. True Dragon Shattering Claw. His hand stretched out rapidly, transforming into a giant dragon claw. Purple golden dragon scales shimmered on the claw as it swung, instantly shattering space. Countless shards of space spun around the claw but could not even scratch its scales. Instead, the claw's power only increased, becoming even more fearsome. This claw, even against an ordinary Saint-grade expert, could tear apart a supreme Dharma form with a single mistake, showing just how ferocious it was. Swish. The dragon claw howled through the air, colliding with the black line. Yet, there was no loud explosion. Instead, the space between them silently crumbled, forming a massive black hole. The dragon claw dissipated, and True Dragon Emperor's body trembled slightly. His face remained expressionless, but a drop of purple golden blood dripped from his palm. The dark, Heavenly Demon Emperor gave True Dragon Emperor a gentle smile. In the next moment, he transformed into numerous afterimages and rapidly closed the distance, his eyes spinning with bizarre black vortices. Roar. True Dragon Emperor let out a dragon's roar as his body suddenly expanded. Dragon scales appeared across his form, resembling a Dragonman hybrid, as he summoned vast power to clash directly with the dark, Heavenly Demon Emperor. Boom. 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 Outside the void, the two sides were locked in a fierce battle. Every clash caused the earth to shake and the heavens to tremble. The sacred Heavenly Demon Emperor, watching the Divine Beast Clan's powerful experts being kept at bay from approaching the northern wilderness hill, turned to Chen Tian, azure-robed sword saint, and the others, offering a faint smile. By the time we arrived, the extraterritorial evil clan had already begun their invasion of the Great Thousand World. So don't expect any more reinforcements. Chen Tian coldly responded, that just means your extraterritorial evil clan has pulled more forces into the battle. He turned his head slightly to glance at the northern wilderness hill, where the demon-refining ancient spear conjured by the Great Thousand Demon Purification Array had already launched over 40 projectiles. With 50 more, they could completely erase the life imprint of the heavenly evil god. Now, they just needed to buy more time. If Brother Xiao and Brother Lin were here, how could these guys wreak such havoc? Chen Tian sighed. Even he held deep admiration for the two of them. Though both were at the mid-saint grade, Chen Tian had a subtle feeling that if they were to face off, he would not stand a chance against either of them. Over the past several tens of thousands of years, countless young talents had emerged in the Great Thousand World. Chen Tian had witnessed many of them, but none had given him the same sense of awe as those two. Indeed, those two are troublesome. Just tying them down has drawn a significant portion of our extraterritorial evil clan's peak strength, the sacred Heavenly Demon Emperor's side. If we had given them more time, they could have become figures like the Immortal Emperor. But unfortunately, The sacred heavenly demon emperor's lips curled into a strange smile. You won't get that chance. Qin Tian's gaze turned cold. Then we'll see if you have the ability to break this demon refining array. The sacred heavenly demon emperor locked eyes with Qin Tian, his gaze growing even more bizarre, and his smile sent a chill down the spine. Qin Tian, I admit, this demon refining array is beyond my control. But while I cannot deal with it, there are others who can. Qin Tian's pupils constricted slightly. His gaze met that of the azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord. All three of them tensed, their spiritual energy surging as they braced themselves with full alertness. Then I really must see who has the ability to deal with this demon refining array. Qin Tian sneered. The sacred heavenly demon emperor laughed, but the smile was exceedingly strange. He fixed his gaze on Qin Tian, and his voice slowly echoed in the air. If you really want to know, let me tell you, that person is you. Demon-slaying king, Qin Tian. Yes, it's you, Qin Tian. The eerie voice of the sacred heavenly demon emperor spread across the world, startling countless people. Everyone was confused and shocked, clearly not understanding the meaning behind his words. The Great Thousand Palace was formed as part of the Great Thousand Alliance to resist the extraterritorial evil clans. Originally, there was no palace master in times of peace, but now that war had returned, Qin Tian was undeniably the new palace master. With his status, he certainly had partial control over the Great Thousand Demon Purification Array, but what puzzled everyone was the meaning behind the sacred heavenly demon emperor's words. Chen also wore an expression of surprise and confusion, his brow furrowed. Though he too didn't understand the sacred heavenly demon emperor's intent, he believed there must be some reason behind his words. Under the many shocked gazes, Qin Tian's brows furrowed as well. His eyes grew sharp as he stared at the sacred heavenly demon emperor and slowly spoke. What do you mean? The sacred heavenly demon emperor's gaze was mysterious, and he gave Qin Tian a faint smile before saying, Back then, you entered my demon domain, killed many demon emperors, and even slew a heavenly demon emperor. In the end, you managed to escape back to the Great Thousand World. That was a glorious achievement in your life. He tilted his head slightly, a mocking smile at the corner of his lips as he continued. But did you really think that, with just your own strength, you could escape right under our noses? Back then, you didn't have the abilities you possess now. A cold chill spread through Qin Tian's body, an ominous feeling rising within him. The sacred heavenly demon emperor waved his sleeve, and a surge of demonic energy swept forth. It formed a demonic shadow beside him, which stared at Qin Tian with pale, eerie eyes, a smile that seemed neither here nor there. Qin Tian, do you recognize him? Qin Tian's gaze immediately shifted to the demonic shadow. His pupils suddenly contracted as he realized with shock that this shadow was none other than the heavenly demon emperor he had killed in the demon domain. How is this possible? He's still alive. Qin Tian's heart was filled with a storm of disbelief. This is the leader of the Heart Demon Clan, one of the 32 great clans of our extraterritorial evil race. Even now, if you were to face him, you would barely have the upper hand. Do you truly think that back then, you were in a position to kill him? The sacred heavenly demon emperor sneered. Heart Demon Clan? Hearing those words, Qin Tian's face changed drastically. He shot a sharp look at the azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord, his voice stern. Seal me. This unexpected turn of events caught everyone off guard, but the azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord were no ordinary figures. Without hesitation, they acted immediately. The azure-robed sword saint flicked his sleeve, and a streak of green sword light tore through the air, shooting toward Qin Tian like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, the undying lord released a black light that descended, enveloping Qin Tian from above. Although they were still unclear about the situation, it seemed that Qin Tian was in some form of trouble. For safety's sake, the priority was to control him. The two beams of spiritual light shot toward him, and Qin Tian's face turned ashen. He made no attempt to resist, letting his dense spiritual energy defenses dissipate as he allowed them to restrain him. Heh, Qin Tian, you really are ruthless, even willing to seal yourself. Just as the two beams of light were about to land, the sacred heavenly demon emperor's eerie laughter rang out again. Boom. At the same time, black and white flames appeared from the sky, colliding with the two beams of light. With a sizzle, the flames consumed the light, turning them into nothingness. The azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord both glared coldly, their eyes flashing with murderous intent. Azure Immortal Sword. The azure-robed sword saint let out a cold shout, and the green longsword in his hand shot straight into the sky. As the sword's glow flickered, it transformed into a massive blade of immense size. The giant sword crossed the sky, turning into a streak of light that pierced through the heavens and earth. In the blink of an eye, it appeared before the sacred heavenly demon emperor, and with a violent stab, it came crashing down. The undying lord's withered hands formed a seal in the blink of an eye. Gray-black spiritual energy surged out and condensed into a small gray-black spirit orb, about the size of a palm. Flecks of lightning flickered on its surface. With a slight tremor, it appeared next to the sacred heavenly demon emperor. Nether spirit profound thunder. As the two launched their attacks, they went all out. Such a strike, even from a top-tier heavenly demon emperor, could easily result in instant death if they were not careful. However, facing their fierce onslaught, the sacred heavenly demon emperor's expression remained indifferent. His eyes, however, burned with black and white fire. Sacred demon flame armor. With a sharp shout, black and white flames erupted from his body, eventually solidifying around him into a fearsome black and white flame armor. The armor exuded a terrifying, monstrous power. Boom. As the black and white flame armor took shape, the massive green sword hurtled toward him. At the same time, the gray-black spirit orb exploded, unleashing boundless gray-black lightning that wreaked havoc in all directions. Centered on the sacred heavenly demon emperor, the space within tens of thousands of feet collapsed into a pitch-black void, with countless fragments of space shooting out like a storm. Everyone looked on in shock at this scene. The two top-tier peak experts of the Great Thousand Worlds had unleashed their full strength, and their attacks were nothing short of catastrophic. But no one knew what had become of the sacred heavenly demon emperor, who took the full force of this strike. Under the intense gaze of countless eyes, the collapsing space slowly began to recover. To everyone's astonishment, at the epicenter of it all, the black and white flames still roared upward, and a demonic figure stood proudly, its black and white armor barely dimmed, with the figure completely unharmed. Hiss. In the northern wilderness hill, many heavenly supremes gasped in disbelief. No one had expected the sacred heavenly demon emperor to be this strong. Even when the azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord attacked together, they were unable to defeat him. You two are strong, but compared to the flame emperor and martial ancestor, there's still a gap. The sacred heavenly demon emperor glanced at them indifferently and said, "The real show is about to begin. You two should wait quietly for a moment." As his voice fell, two black and white fire rings suddenly shot out from his eyes. With a shake, they pierced through space and appeared before the azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord. The black and white fire rings spun rapidly, igniting into fierce flames that surrounded the two like fire pillars. "Heart Demon, it's your turn. Let Chen Tian see how many years I've been planning for this day," the sacred heavenly demon emperor said with a faint smile, addressing the Heart Demon clan leader. The Heart Demon clan leader nodded and then gave Chen Tian a strange smile. "The demonic shadow you killed back then was the Heart Demon seed I had been cultivating. Although you destroyed it and disrupted my cultivation, what you don't know is that the seed was secretly planted in your heart. Over time, even as you reach the late saint grade, you'll be unable to detect it. Back then, you rampaged through my demon domain, thinking you had escaped unscathed, but what you didn't realize is that this was all part of the plot of our extraterritorial evil clan. You were an unexpected pawn, but who would have thought that you would become the palace master of the Great Thousand Palace, haha. However, today, it's time for this pawn to serve its purpose." The Heart Demon's sly laughter echoed through the air as he suddenly formed a seal with his hands, releasing billions of black rays that shot out from his body. These rays pierced through the void, as if connecting to some unknown place. As the rays entered the void, Chen Tian's body trembled, and he felt a strange power flowing from his heart. This power suppressed even the spiritual energy within his body. Chen Tian let out a low growl, his eyes bloodshot as he desperately tried to channel his spiritual energy. The more he resisted, the more he felt his control slipping away. "Haha, my Heart Demon seed. Activate the Great Thousand Demon Purification Array." The Heart Demon outside the void let out a strange, high-pitched screech. Then, under the horrified gazes of the Heavenly Supremes, they saw Chen Tian's hands slowly rise. Trembling, he formed a seal, and the light membrane beneath his feet began to ripple violently, gradually fading away. Mu Chun, Qing Yanjing, and the others were all filled with a chill when they witnessed the scene. None of them could have expected that Chen Tian, the current palace master of the Great Thousand Palace, had been set up by the extraterritorial evil clan hundreds of years ago, with the so-called heart demon seed planted inside him. In the midst of countless shocked gazes, the light membrane formed by the Great Thousand Demon Purification Array began to dissolve layer by layer from the outermost layer. In just a few breaths, dozens of layers of the light membrane had dissolved. The Heavenly Demon Emperor and several other demon emperors looked at the thinning light membrane, their eyes burning with intense desire. Once the last layer was breached, they would be able to launch a full-scale invasion and attack Northern Wilderness Hill. Chen Tian's face twisted in pain. He could clearly feel what his body was doing, yet he was unable to control it. The suffocating anger filled his heart, making him want to self-destruct. He gazed at the dissolving protective light membrane, his eyes filled with despair and self-reproach. But his hands still slowly formed the sealing gestures, preparing to open the final layer. However, just as his hands were about to complete the seal, suddenly, Chen Tian's body shook violently. A dazzling and mysterious flame began to burn inside him. The flame rose and enveloped his body. This flame was extraordinarily mystical, and everyone could see that as it enveloped Chen Tian, strange black lines seemed to shatter in the void. The Heart Demon Clan leader trembled violently, suddenly coughing up a mouthful of blood. His expression darkened as he felt the Heart Demon seed planted inside Chen Tian's body being completely burned away. The sudden turn of events made the sacred Heavenly Demon Emperor's expression change slightly. He stared at the mysterious flame emerging from Chen Tian's body, his gaze dark and furious. His voice was cold and full of malice as he spat out each word with venom. Emperor Flame? Damn that Flame Emperor, ruining our clan's great plan. The brilliant flame burned from within Chen Tian, enveloping him. The flame exuded an aura of mystery and overwhelming power, as though it were the Emperor of all flames. That's Emperor Flame, the Flame Emperor's fire. How could it appear on Chen Tian's body? Among the many heavenly supremes on Northern Wilderness Hill, who had previously turned pale from Chen Tian's actions, they were now looking at the brilliant flame with uncertainty. The scene before them was truly astonishing. As the flame surged, Chen Tian felt the control over his body return. He looked at the fire surrounding him with a complex expression and whispered, "Brother Xiao is truly formidable." While others didn't know how the Emperor Flame came to be within him, Chen Tian was very clear. It had been hundreds of years ago, when he returned to the Great Thousand Palace after his journey in the Demon Domain. He had encountered the Flame Emperor then. At the time, the Flame Emperor had furrowed his brows and looked at him for a long while, before finally giving him a fire orb to wear. Chen Tian had been puzzled by this gift, but today he finally understood. Perhaps back then, the Flame Emperor had faintly sensed something. However, the Heart Demon seed had been buried too deeply, and before it had activated, even the Flame Emperor couldn't be sure. So, he had cautiously given him the Emperor Flame Fire Orb as a precaution. Unexpectedly, that cautious action of the Flame Emperor had saved Chen Tian from becoming a sinner of the Great Thousand World. In the distance, the towering pillars of fire surrounding the azure-robed Sword Saint and the Undying Lord began to fade. The two of them had finally broken free from the encirclement of the sacred Heavenly Demon Emperor, and their anxious gazes immediately turned toward Chen Tian. When they saw the Emperor Flame surrounding Chen Tian, they froze for a moment, then quickly understood. They both let out a sigh of relief. At this point, only the final layer of defense remained in the Great Thousand Demon Purification Array. If it was breached, the extraterritorial evil clan could invade Northern Wilderness Hill on a grand scale. Once the Heavenly Evil God awakened, it would undoubtedly lead to a catastrophe. Damn! The sacred Heavenly Demon Emperor's eyes darkened. He hadn't expected to fail at the final hurdle. The killing intent swirling around him nearly solidified into a tangible form, covering the void. Chen Tian, immediately activate the array and restore the defenses, the Undying Lord barked in a low voice. Chen Tian took a deep breath, not daring to delay. He quickly changed the sealing gestures, and the Great Thousand Array rippled again. Layer by layer, the defensive membranes began to slowly recover. Attack! Break through this array. The Heavenly Evil God waved his sleeve, his eyes flashing with cold light. His voice rang out, chilling to the bone. Boom! As his voice fell, vast demonic aura surged behind the heavenly evil god. Countless demonic shadows let out long howls, and in the next instant, the aura churned as streams of demonic smoke howled forth, shooting straight toward the light membrane that enveloped the outskirts of northern Wilderness Hill. Everyone, channel your spiritual energy with all your might. Activate the great 1,000 demon purification array. Chen Tian's expression turned grave as he bellowed, his voice echoing across the entire northern Wilderness Hill. The many heavenly supremes, seeing the overwhelming tide of invading demons, dared not delay. With thunderous shouts, they surged their spiritual energy, and behind them, enormous supreme Dharma forms manifested. With each breath, these forms transformed into torrents of spiritual energy that poured into the rows of bronze coffins. Whoosh, whoosh. From the void beyond, countless streams of demonic smoke swept in with terrifying momentum. Chen Tian, the azure-robed sword saint, and the undying lord exchanged glances. In unison, they poured their spiritual energy without reservation into the light membrane beneath their feet. Buzz, buzz. The light membrane erupted in countless beams of radiant light. These beams surged outward, colliding with the onrushing demonic shadows. Sizzle, sizzle. Upon contact, the radiant beams revealed terrifying destructive power. Wherever they shone, the demonic shadows vanished without even a scream, reduced to wisps of black smoke that dispersed into the heavens. This great 1,000 demon purification array was born from the very life imprint of the immortal emperor. It was hypersensitive to evil chi. Upon detection, it would dissolve it instantly. Only those who cultivated spiritual energy could navigate through it unharmed. Keep going. The sacred heavenly demon emperor looked upon his decimated forces, their numbers halved in mere moments. Yet his expression remained cold and unmoved. His chilling voice echoed out. And so, wave after wave of demonic shadows continued their assault. Though it was no different from moths rushing into flames, they fearlessly hurled themselves at the grand formation. What a cold-blooded monster, Chen Tian muttered coldly. The great 1,000 demon purification array is highly effective against extraterritorial evil chi. No matter how many he sacrifices, he won't break through this defense. The azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord nodded slightly. The latter, more cautious, added, "Still, we must not lower our guard. The extraterritorial evil clan has plotted for tens of thousands of years. They won't rely on brute force alone." Beyond the void, the sacred heavenly demon emperor watched the suicidal charges with icy eyes. In a matter of minutes, their losses were staggering. Among them, nearly 100 demon emperors had fallen. And yet, even with such devastating losses, they hadn't been able to shake that seemingly thin light membrane in the slightest. This formation left behind by the immortal emperor truly restrains our extraterritorial evil clan. Behind him, several clan leaders of the 32 great clans growled, their voices laced with both hatred and fear. The sacred heavenly demon emperor showed no emotion. He stared coldly at the carnage, until a flicker of strange light flashed through his eyes, and a silent order was given. Amidst the roaring demonic smoke, several dozen streams of demonic aura subtly diverged, slipping through the chaos and rapidly approaching the light membrane of the great 1,000 demon purification array. Has the sacred heavenly demon emperor lost his mind? At this rate, even if he sacrifices all his troops, he still won't break through the array. Chen Tian frowned as he watched the steady flow of evil clan elites rushing to their deaths. The azure-robed sword saint and the undying lord also seemed puzzled. Their opponent's behavior was clearly unusual. As they exchanged doubts, yet another wave of howling evil clan elites was struck by the purification light and obliterated into nothingness. Then, another wave charged forth, targeting the weakest part of the light membrane. The purification light swept down again, illuminating the new attackers. But then something unexpected happened. The dozens of demonic shadows, rather than disintegrating, merely trembled slightly under the light. They did not vanish like the others. Instead, they accelerated and dove toward the membrane with renewed force. What? Seeing this, Chen Tian, the azure-robed sword saint, and the undying lord were all visibly shaken. These demonic shadows, were resisting the purification light? Stop them! Unease surged in their hearts, and they shouted in unison as they prepared to strike. Boom! Boom! But in that instant, nearly 10 clan leaders of the 32 great clans attacked simultaneously from the void. Torrents of demonic aura blotted out the sky, slamming down fiercely on the trio. Crash! Crash! Heaven and earth trembled. Chen and the others were momentarily halted. And in that brief delay, it was already too late to intercept the strange demonic shadows. As the dozens of demonic shadows appeared before them, they shot toward the final layer of the thin membrane. Don't panic. The Great Thousand Demon Purification Array repels all demonic aura. Once they come into contact with the demon purification barrier, they will immediately be. The Undying Lord spoke in a deep voice. However, before his words had finished, the dozens of demonic shadows had already reached the demon purification barrier. At that very moment, the overwhelming demonic energy from those shadows suddenly dissipated into thin air, followed by a vast surge of spiritual light erupting from within their bodies. Spiritual energy. How is this possible? In that instant, Chen and the others' pupils constricted, horror spreading across their faces. The demonic figures, which had once been brimming with demonic energy, were now harnessing spiritual energy, and the strength of that energy was at the heavenly supreme level. How could the people of the extraterritorial evil clan cultivate spiritual energy? Panic erupted in the northern wilderness hill as many heavenly supreme experts stared in disbelief. From the rising demonic aura earlier, it was clear that these figures were from the extraterritorial evil clan, but now, the profound spiritual energy they unleashed was on par with the greatest of them. Amidst the stunned gazes, the light membrane of the Grand Formation did not put up any resistance when those figures touched it. Instead, they passed right through, entering the northern wilderness hill. Ha! Chen, the extraterritorial evil clan, has been planning for tens of thousands of years. Do you think you can imagine the extent of our power? Outside in the void, the sacred heavenly demon emperor laughed to the skies. You must be wondering how the extraterritorial evil clan can cultivate spiritual energy, right? It's simple. They are not just members of the extraterritorial evil clan, but a new race born from the fusion of the extraterritorial evil clan and the beings of the Great Thousand World. I call them the Evil Spirit Clan. They are naturally capable of cultivating both demonic aura and spiritual energy. Haha. A heavy silence fell over the northern wilderness hill. Everyone was shocked, their faces turning pale with fear. The extraterritorial evil clan had occupied half of the Great Thousand World and had invaded countless lower realms, giving them the population needed to create this new race. After all, they cared little for how many beings of the Great Thousand World died in the process. And most importantly, they had succeeded. Chen and the others looked up with grim expressions, watching as the figures that had pierced through the membrane descended onto the northern wilderness hill. At this moment, their spiritual light faded, revealing human-like forms. They appeared to be no different from humans of the Great Thousand World, but it was clear to everyone that in their palms, there was an eerie eye slowly opening. In an instant, a terrifying surge of spiritual energy erupted from their bodies, spreading across the land. These figures, are they the so-called Evil Spirit Clan? High above, dozens of figures floated in midair, their gray-black spiritual energy surging like a tidal wave behind them, bringing with it an immense pressure of spiritual force. Especially in their palms, there was an open eye, emitting a strange aura that pulsed from within. Evil Spirit Clan. Chen stared grimly at the dozen or so figures that had entered the northern wilderness hill. This scene was completely unexpected. No one had imagined that the extraterritorial evil clan would have bred a new race from the fusion of their own and the beings of the Great Thousand World. This new race possessed the best of both worlds, capable of cultivating both the demonic aura of the extraterritorial evil clan and the spiritual energy of the Great Thousand World. It was almost unbelievable. But no matter how unbelievable it was, the reality was right before their eyes. All heavenly supremes in the northern wilderness hill, listen up. Immediately slay the invaders. Chen, the azure-robed sword saint, and the Undying Lord all wore grim expressions. However, they dared not leave their positions, for they had to defend against the massive assault from the extraterritorial evil clan. Their command echoed throughout every corner of the northern wilderness hill. Qing Yinjing, Mo Tian, and the others exchanged glances and said in deep voices, "We can't leave easily. For now, maintaining the Great Thousand Demon Purification Array and eliminating the Heavenly Evil God is our priority." They had already realized that the strongest of the Evil Spirit clan was at the mid-Saint grade, with others at various levels of Heavenly Supreme. Mu Chen took a deep breath, standing up. "Leave these Evil Spirit clan members to us. Please continue maintaining the seal, everyone." His figure slowly floated up, and soon a streak of spiritual light flew towards him, transforming into a graceful silhouette beside him. It was Luoli, who smiled lightly at him and said, "I'll go with you." Mu Chen smiled and nodded. With the Tiling ancient scroll in Luoli's possession, she could summon enough power to contend with someone at the early Saint grade. Whoosh! Whoosh! At the same time, streaks of light gathered, landing behind Mu Chen. A unified voice resounded, "We, the warriors of the Mu King, are willing to follow you and slay the demons." Mu Chen also nodded lightly, saying nothing more. With a swift movement, he appeared before the group of Evil Spirit clan, blocking their path, accompanied by dozens of Heavenly Supreme experts. "Everyone, return to where you came from. After all, the bloodline within your veins flows from the creatures of the Great Thousand World. Do not assist the evil in committing atrocities." Mu Chen's sharp gaze fell on the leader of the Evil Spirit clan, a gray-haired man, who had a noble presence. The bloodline of the Great Thousand World? The gray-haired man smirked coldly at Mu Chen's words, seeming to mock him. "If that's the case, then where were all you people of the Great Thousand World when my Evil Spirit clan was confined and treated like pigs and dogs?" Mu Chen's brows furrowed slightly. It seemed the Evil Spirit clan held a low status among the extraterritorial evil clans, and their past was undoubtedly filled with complicated stories. But at this moment, he had no time for such discussions. No matter what, these Evil Spirit clan members had to be driven out of the northern wilderness hill. "Since you are aware of the ruthlessness of the extraterritorial evil clans, why continue to serve them?" Mu Chen asked. The gray-haired man grinned menacingly. "Serve them? Who else should I serve, if not them? If I don't, my clan will be slaughtered in rivers of blood. At that point, can you still save them?" Mu Chen's eyes narrowed. In that case, further discussion is pointless. A vast wave of spiritual energy surged around him, and the very space beneath his feet began to collapse. "I am Xun'er, leader of the Evil Spirit clan. Today, I shall test just how weak the Great Thousand World is, that it cannot even defend its own land. Letting the extraterritorial evil clans invade, slaughtering the living at will." The gray-haired man, Xun'er, let out a long, angry howl, his voice dripping with hatred. Behind Mu Chen, the many Heavenly Supreme experts remained silent, a hint of shame evident. The appearance of the Evil Spirit clan was, after all, due to the extraterritorial evil clans occupying half of the Great Thousand World, where they cruelly cultivated the lives of its creatures. "Do not be distracted. Prepare for battle," Mu Chen commanded solemnly. Perhaps the Evil Spirit clan had endured much hardship, but this was no time for sympathy. Since they had chosen to side with the extraterritorial evil clans, they were enemies of the Great Thousand World. If their plans succeeded, the entire Great Thousand World would be transformed into a demon domain. In such a moment, unnecessary compassion must be cast aside. "Kill!" Xun'er roared, and at his command, dozens of light shadows shot forth, black-gray spiritual energy swirling and blocking the sun. Though this was spiritual energy, it appeared unnatural, with a powerful corrosive essence, clearly akin to extraterritorial evil energy. Mu Chen's eyes gleamed coldly. With a wave of his hand, the Heavenly Supreme experts behind him shot forward, scattering to intercept the numerous powerful members of the Evil Spirit clan. In a flash, Mu Chen appeared before Xun'er, delivering a punch without expression. Boom! The punch shattered the very space itself. With the terrifying strength of Mu Chen's Saint-grade physique, even a seemingly casual punch carried immense power. Any ordinary saint would have been left reeling from such an attack. This person is merely at the immortal grade. How can his strength be so terrifying? Xun'er's eyes narrowed as he observed the punch that shattered space. He could sense the terrifying power hidden within it and dared not be careless. He stretched out his hand, and an unusual black eye appeared on his palm, glowing with a purple hue, marking its extraordinary nature. Buzz! A black-purple light erupted from the strange eye, wrapping around Xun'er's hand. In an instant, it solidified into layers of black-purple armor, like black iron with sharp barbs, resembling a vicious weapon for slaughter. Boom! Mu Chen's fist collided with Xun'er's, his hand now covered in the eerie armor. Visible shockwaves of power spread out, shattering the void. The space around their fists collapsed, and both warriors staggered back a few steps. Devouring spirit purple flame. Mu Chen's eyes flashed with violet light. He opened his mouth, and the devouring spirit purple flame surged out, enveloping Jiangye in an instant, consuming him in a breath. The blazing purple flame roared, fueled by spiritual energy, seemingly intent on turning Jiangye into ash. The intense heat distorted the surrounding void. Boom! Amidst the burning flames, a dark purple figure suddenly shot out, like a giant, instantly teleporting to Mu Chen's front. With a roar, a fist covered in black-purple armor-like layers slammed down on Mu Chen's crossed arms, emitting a fierce black-purple glow. Boom! A low rumble echoed as Mu Chen's body jolted, flying backward over 1,000 meters. He then raised his head, his face grim, and saw a giant in the sky, fully enveloped in black-purple armor, standing tall. The figure's body was covered with evil spiritual energy, almost solidified into armor, with evil black-purple spikes spreading out, glinting with a cold, sharp gleam. At this moment, Jiangye seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty beast, every part of his body radiating deadly power. This combination of extraterritorial evil energy and spiritual energy is rather interesting, Mu Chen thought to himself, his gaze flashing as he looked at Jiangye, who exuded immense malice. Just a mere immortal grade. You think you can stop me? Is the great thousand world running out of people? Jiangye's eyes, barely visible under the black-purple armor, flickered with cold light as he stared at Mu Chen, his voice icy. Underestimating me again? Uh-huh. Mu Chen smiled upon hearing this, but his youthful face suddenly turned cold. He made a single-handed seal, and a brilliant light of glass appeared behind him, spreading out through the void. As it expanded, an ancient glass figure also emerged behind him. After their previous encounter, Mu Chen could tell that the leader of the evil spirit clan, Jiangye, was incredibly strong, no weaker than Mo Tian. Therefore, he no longer held back and immediately summoned his eternal undying body. Eternal undying hand. As soon as the ancient glass figure appeared, it struck out. The glass hand flicked forward gently, and instantly, the radiance of glass exploded. An ancient glass giant hand, adorned with ancient light patterns, pierced through the space and appeared above Jiangye, then gently slapped down. When this hand landed, it seemed as though the entire river of time, spanning eons, was behind it, carrying with it an immortal force. The ancient glass hand appeared, and Jiangye's expression slightly changed, clearly sensing a dangerous aura from above. He immediately shot backward, transforming into countless afterimages, his speed so fast that the naked eye could hardly follow. However, no matter how he dodged, the ancient hand seemed destined to strike down on his head the moment it appeared. Boom! The ancient giant hand finally fell, crashing heavily onto Jiangye's body. The terrifying force exploded, sending him flying like a fly, and collapsing a massive mountain peak. The mountain collapsed, rocks scattered, and Mu Chen stood in mid-air, looking down at the ruins of the mountain. His dark eyes gleamed with cold, sharp intensity. Since you chose to side with the extraterritorial evil forces, then for the sake of the other living beings in the great thousand world, I have no choice but to unleash a massacre and slay you here. Boom. In the rubble of the collapsed mountain, rocks exploded as a black-purple shadow shot into the sky. It then grew larger, turning into a monstrous, ferocious demonic figure about 10,000 meters tall. The terrifying pressure swept through the heavens and earth, causing even some saint-grade experts to change their expressions in fear. At the same time, Jiangye's murderous roar echoed through the air. With your young and inexperienced self, how dare you speak so arrogantly? Today, I will use your head to welcome the arrival of the evil god.